this week seems to not know if it wants to be fast or slow. It's like it just speeds up towards the middle, and then the end it applies the brakes. Another week, another round of news headlines telling us what we need to fix in the world, and we're still not listening. I hope you are having a good week, as good as possible, regardless of what goes on in the world. You cannot be insular, but you also cannot allow the world to stop you from seeing it as a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place. It is worth us fighting for the right to live peacefully within it. It's just that people come along and want to mess that up for the rest of us. And you've really got to wonder, and I talked about this yesterday in the Sandhya show, and I call that fundamental health, and I talked about that also in yesterday's The Daily Egg. Fundamental health. And the people who are the powers that want to be, well, they certainly need huge examination of what they're doing. How it is crazy. It is a farce. If we were watching a movie, it would be considered, what's that movie? Idiocracy, right? This is how, an interesting fact about that movie, they did not want to release that when it first came out. Now, Dwayne loves this movie and has been telling me all about it. I, believe it or not, have not watched it, but I know about it now, and holy cow, you watch it wherever you are. We're going to watch it soon again, but I'm going to now continue with the news headlines. I know we focus a lot on what is happening in Gaza and the Middle East, but we also must draw attention to everywhere else. Unfortunately, what is happening in the Middle East now is taking all the attention, and I'm seeing all the advocacy now focusing on what is happening, to the point where people in solidarity are changing faith and or adopting the faith to show solidarity. Look, I think we do need more faith, but less segregation and less. I'm not so sure solidarity should be. Look, I don't know. Do you? Do we feel that any of this is going to make a difference, or is it just going to? It's very curious. I'm very curious as to the understanding behind why people choose to do that rather than appealing to all sides. And I think that may be called fence sitting, right? But there is a way for it to not be fence sitting. There is a way to actually say, hey, we're not playing these war games anymore. And that's pretty much 7 billion of us have got to do that. That we won't, because for some reason. But we need to talk about Sudan. And I'm reading now from Al Jazeera. This is an opinion by Amitabh Behar, who is the interim executive director of Oxfam International. And this article is from 18th April. The world cannot turn its back on Sudan and its neighbors any longer. The conflict in Sudan has displaced more than 2 million people, triggering one of the world's largest humanitarian crises. The international community has a responsibility to do more. At Renk in South Sudan, 40 kilometers south of the border with Sudan, the writer met a young boy, Myok, orphaned by the brutality of the Sudan conflict. Myok is one of at least 600,000 refugees who have fled to South Sudan since the start of the conflict a year ago. I'm going to now read a news piece because that is an opinion piece and that is personalized. So, war in Sudan has caused a humanitarian crisis and a mass exodus. This is now reading from ABC, Australia. 1 year since a power struggle between rival generals exploded into street fighting in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, war has spilled throughout the nation, sparking a humanitarian crisis that's overwhelming aid agencies and neighboring states. That's because everything is now focused, which it should be. But I feel that there's something bigger at play here and far more evil. The attention is being drawn and all just gathered at like, a magnetic attention that we're all. Even I get lost in that, and I usually keep a track on what's happening in the world's crises, and now we're all super focused, which we should. I am not here to give advice, and I don't know what the answer to that is. I just know as a human being, we need to keep a lookout, and we cannot take sides. It has to be on the side of humanity. Humanity against those who would commit genocide. And it's not just happening in the Middle East. It is happening also in the continent of Africa. It has been happening for a very long time. And I think all of this is a result of the secret machinations and manipulations behind the scenes. Well, that's why they're secret, right? But we know things are happening behind the scenes, but there are also things that are happening in secret. Media has a huge responsibility, and unfortunately media is now being cracked down. Get your news from transparent news sources. The Daily Egg is one of them. I do curate the news from news headlines already written by wonderful journalists from all over the world. We are seeking advertisers and sponsors because we do have contributors who can report from all over the world. It's just that we need to pay people. We need to pay ourselves. We need to pay people. So help us get to that point where we can be your trusted news source, but we need to pay people to get the news straight from the source. Right now, I am reading news from the different outlets, which I will share all these outlets in the caption. So, the scale of the exodus, and I'm now reading from ABC Australia again, the scale of the exodus is almost incomprehensible. Around 10 million Sudanese have been displaced within Sudan to other African nations and even to Australia, where this distant crisis haunts Melbourne's Sudanese community. Oh, gosh. And this is from The Guardian, for a full year, the bodies have piled up in Sudan and still the world looks away. No, our gaze is being redirected by whatever is making the most noise. This is the world today. This is who gets the most attention. Merit doesn't get attention, hustling does. Those that are loudest, regardless of the community that they are representing or say that they are representing, like I'm talking about communities that have been marginalized. Please take note of my language. I don't say marginalized communities. I say communities that have been marginalized because we didn't marginalize these communities or ourselves, our communities. But there are lots of people who represent communities that have been marginalized who are actually not for the community, they're for themselves. They want representation for themselves because their ego has been traumatized. And I'm going to say Lizzo. I'm going to say an example of that is Lizzo. I'm going to carry on reading, and this is from The Guardian. 1 year ago today, and that was on 15th of April, so this is 4 days old now here. 1 year ago today, Sudan descended into war. The toll so far is catastrophic. Thousands are dead and millions are displaced, with hunger and disease ravaging all in the absence of aid. When it comes to Africa, apparently no one cares because Africa, the continent, is rich with not only the source of where we all came from, and that's what they want to obliterate, whoever they are, we know who they are, and they still want to exploit that. If peace and life, I'm lost for words here, if peace happened to the people of the countries in Africa, and if they actually got equity and they actually lived in prosperity and harmony. South Africa is trying to carve something out for itself, and the Zionist movement of the black people in Africa, on the continent of Africa, they're not black, they're people. But to the wider world, the black people, the Zionist movement, that is something we will be unpacking. Because from my understanding, Zion comes from a Zulu word. But of course, Zion is also a word in the Bible that they attribute to Judaism or the language. And Semite is a term coined by European scholars a few centuries ago to refer to a group of languages from that area, and that group of languages are Arabic, Hebrew, and Afro languages. And that's what Semite means. It's an archaic term for languages, and it has been co-opted to mean something else. But if you're going to call someone who is against genocide an anti-Semite, you also have to understand that if you are saying that if you are actually against the Middle Eastern people, then you are also an anti-Semite. Please get these facts right. I'm a pedant. If we're all forced to talk a language, which I love, I do love the English language. I love it. It is taken from, I do think it is a wonderful example of the global language because it has been taken from everywhere. It is a lingua franca. Better read the Guardian article. The UN has called the situation one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent history. afflicting about 25 million people. The Sudanese people are suffering what has become the largest displacement crisis in the world. The war was both sudden and a long time coming. The short history is that of a country where, following a promising 2019 revolution that overthrew the dictator Omar al-Bashir, the army and the rapid support forces, a powerful militia ejected civilians from a power-sharing agreement between the three parties, and that could not come to an agreement themselves. Their partnership broke down in April last year, and the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, moved quickly, taking over the capital city Khartoum in an unprecedented moment in the country's history. It then spread through the rest of the country, looting, assaulting, and murdering civilians. The world is just taking their cue from what has happened to the world by the Euro colonizers. The world has been colonizing itself, taking its cue from what happened to them. Now, this idea of invasion isn't just a European thing. I do know that countries have, let's just talk about India. What happened to India? We're going to talk, of course, about England and what happened to England. I mean, the Anglos and the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes invaded England and kicked the indigenous British off, and then became English. And so much so, they're also the ruling family of England and the rest of the world, apparently, because all we are to them is their commonwealth. So people are fighting their own people. People are killing their own people for hierarchy. Where does it all end? What do people actually want? And why do people keep slaves if they really, really want to conquer? But it's about conquering other people. We've talked about this. Why then keep slaves? Why, if you're going to go and colonize a country and commit genocide to have power, over people, why keep anyone? Why do people feel the need to keep slaves and trophies of their conquest? What kind of weakness and sickness is that? Oh gosh, I'm going to continue reading a little bit more information. This is from the Guardian article, and this was written by Nesreen Malik. The army, and here is the long history, which established the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, in the first place, from remnants of the infamous Janjaweed troops it partnered with in Darfur to help it savagely suppress rebellion in the region, has so far been unable to prevail against its own creation. The result is a fluid situation with gains and losses for both parties, no discernible front line, and millions of Sudanese people caught in the middle. It's not so much a civil war as it is a war against civilians whose homes, livelihoods, and very lives have been the collateral damage so far. It is two tragedies overlaid. The first is of a country that until last year, although beset with conflict and dictatorship, had managed to maintain its integrity, and with it a sense that there was a way through its troubles after which it could achieve its potential. Whew. That is, I'm going to read now some other articles. I'm going to go back to ABC Australia. So just reading some headlines for you. What's happening here is union calls on public not to re-traumatize Bondi workers by asking them about attack as shops reopen. The Retail Workers Union is pleading with the public not to ask retail workers to relive the Bondi Junction attacks as retail stores reopen today. Next headline, police charge teenage boy who allegedly stabbed a bishop with terrorism offence. A 16-year-old boy who allegedly stabbed Sydney Bishop Murray Emanuel at Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley has been charged with committing a terrorist act. The next headline, faith with a price tag. How much should people pay to connect to God? In Samoa, churches spend millions building cathedrals to connect communities to God. But as debts and poverty skyrocket, many are questioning the price tag. Dwayne, you lived in Samoa for a while, working there. Mm-hmm. Lots of churches everywhere, right?
The street I lived in had 5. And the street was about 500 meters.
Wow.
5 churches.
And what is the denomination? What do they primarily?
One was a Protestant. Right next to me was a Catholic church. There was a Mormon church right down the end, and two other ones I had. No, Anglican. I think there was an Anglican one, and another. I have no idea what the other denomination was.
We'll talk more about this
Yeah.
in the views part of the Daily Egg and the Studio K
Yeah.
about faith. Because I have an observation or two myself about these things, but we'll continue reading the news headlines. Specialist says there may have been systematic failures between authorities over the treatment of Joel Cauchi, who is the Bondi terrorist, the murderer. I don't know how else to say. We can't say alleged. There is lots of footage and witnesses and proof that there's no alleged about it. And what do you call someone like that who, because of a weak mind that has then been attributed to mental health issues, and I talk about this, that mental health issues are separate to what a weak mind is. And a weak mind then, when affected by mental health issues, I am not a medical professional. Do your own fact checking. I'm not telling you advice. I'm saying that this is my observation, that there are many strong-minded people and strong people who do have mental health issues, who are traumatized through no fault of their own, because they've either had abuse happen to them individually, or they are absorbing the abuse that is happening to the world and the collective that is being traumatized. So lots and lots of good people, strong-minded people, are being affected by this and have mental health issues. But there are people who are weak-minded who then cannot. And that these people do need to be on medication. From all accounts I'm reading, Joel Cauchi had stopped taking his medication. There needs to be if they want to inject us with all sorts of vaccinations, and I am pro-vaccine here, there should be a way to permanently inject something. Why not? What does it serve people's purpose to keep having, tablets being created so that people can take medication constantly and profits can still be had? Surely there's got to be a way to do something to people who are too weak, and their minds are their brains are faulty. Their brains are faulty. People who want to do these things to people, their brains are faulty. We all get angry. We all get traumatized. I'm going to continue reading some news headlines. There's a baby drought in Australia. Here's why you should care. I'm going to read a little bit about this, and I'm going to also share some observations and opinions. Opinions are subjective. There is no such thing as an objective opinion. You cannot form an opinion objectively unless you are completely split in half and can talk to yourself as a clone. Babies, right? Babies. In short, recent data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics has revealed Australians are experiencing a near record low fertility rate. The data found Australians are likely to have an average of 1.6 babies. How does that work out, 1.6 babies? Over the next 5 years, below the international average of 2.3. What's next? Demographers say the fertility rate will have serious impacts on the future of Australian life in years to come. No. Demographers should actually tell the truth, that the fertility rate in the world will have serious impact on capitalist structures, on capitalist constructs, on the economy, because they want workers. If we stop having children, there may be a lack of males in the world, and secondly, a lack of slaves, a lack of workers, because people have finite life cycles. So, we live and then our mortal coil gets extinguished, blah, 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 because of whatever reason people in the world want to extinguish other people's. What right do you have to play God like this? Speaking of God, we build these institutions just to put fear in the... We will talk about this later in Studio K. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit hot under the collar. Look, we've got a condensation. That hot here. Anyway. If you can have, so in 2004, then Australian Treasurer Peter Costello, back when Tony Abbott was also considered a head. They were Abbott and Costello, and they were not as funny, but equally as stupid, more so. Costello announced the baby bonus, and this is a huge issue, a tax incentive for Australians to prioritise having children. So we see people who are children themselves, like our neighbours and other people who have children. And they get paid to have children. And unfortunately, people can't have surrogates and people can't adopt, but people will get paid to have children. So you have absolute idiots who have children with no intention of actually guiding this human being they have brought into the world. It's like profit. It's just another capitalist structure. Capitalist stipulation. If you can't have children, it's a good thing to do, he said. You should have one for the father, one for the mother, and one for the country if you want to fix the aging demographic. What is that? The Father, the Son, and the Holy... What is this? What is this? But 20 years on from the installation of the landmark policy, Australia's near record low fertility rate has failed to lift. Look, I'm not seeing any evidence of that because everywhere I see there's people with, one kid here, one in the pram, one in the stomach. Yeah. There's breeders everywhere. I don't really know what statistics they're talking about here. Of course, well, then you and I are two people who have chosen. I chose not to have children, and not because I don't love them. We both are very fond of children. I have brought up children for 2 decades. I was a stepmother for 5, whose parents are alive and kicking and privileged. Their mother was a fertility factory who only had the children to keep the father. Yeah, I said that. I brought the kids up. I can say that. From childhood to adulthood. Anyway, I'm going to continue reading other news headlines from Sydney Morning Herald, which is very much a Euro. Anyway, 6 missed calls, mystery bank records and CCTV. Now, we're still talking about the Lehrman case, the Brittany Higgins case. And it is wonderful that Justice Michael Lee, he trudged unyieldingly through CCTV footage, phone logs, bank records, receipts, and hours of testimony. This is how he arrived at his ruling that Lehrman raped Higgins. Brittany Higgins came forth and said that she had been raped in Parliament by a government staffer by the name of Bruce Lehrman. And she talked about it with a very esteemed journalist, and I talked about this on the Daily Egg yesterday. And then he took them to court for defamation and lied, because they lie and lie and lie. Narcissists and saboteurs and liars and sadly, misogynists, actually. I was going to say sadly patriarchy, but patriarchy is, man is different from the patriarchy. Misogynists aren't just in male form. Unfortunately, they come in all forms, so they are women, misogynists disguised as women. I'm talking about womb women born to that. So, and now so that's how Justice Michael Lee arrived at his ruling. I will be doing a deep dive on this to, bring viewers, international viewers, up to par as to what is happening with this. It's quite terrible. I'm going to read the next headline. Lisa Wilkinson won in court, but is this the end of her TV career? Unfair. The Lehrman defamation trial is finally behind her. So what can one of TV's highest paid presenters have to look forward to now? I talked about Lisa Wilkinson yesterday. She was an original role model for me. She has been, in the media doing with integrity her entire life. If this is the end of her TV career, it is a loss for Australian TV, but Australian TV is nothing to talk about anymore. And I will talk about that some other time, because Australian TV used to be global class, better than most things, but not anymore. So Lisa Wilkinson not being on TV anymore is not a loss for her. It is a loss for Australian television that gets its jollies and its knowledge and its entertainment and its education from shit like Married at First Sight and any other reality crap that people would rather watch than actually watch. Reality. You want reality? The lives of our days. This is reality TV. You want reality? Look at what's happening in the world. That is reality. Reality TV is the genocide we are watching unfold in front of our very eyes. The only reason they are cracking down on social media, what we can share, is because of the information that gets shared. And people, well, I don't know. Here's another article that says, lock parents up over knives, police say. Police have asked for tougher knife crime penalties despite data showing the overall rate of violent crimes involving blades has steadily fallen over the last decade. But let's not talk about what's happening to mental health, especially in men and males. That's what needs to be really, really addressed. What is going on? Why are there not enough role models for young males, for males to look up to say, that's who I want to be? Why are the ones, that's what I'm saying, the people who most want to represent, they're the hustlers, they're the loud ones, and these are the people who are being looked up to. Like Lizzo I cited. It's terrible. I shouldn't be citing this because she is a Black American woman, a role model for so many people, for so many women who are of a size themselves, Rubenesque, whatever size. They looked up to her as someone who showed the world, yeah, see, we can do anything, but ego comes into it. I hate citing her because she's a Black woman. I hate that. But I have said previously on, just a few minutes ago, whenever, that as well, that the people right now in positions of leadership or representation who are the loudest, they're not the best. They're just there for their own motives, their own ulterior motive, their own agenda. It's their ego that has been traumatized. And because we are still talking about things like inclusivity, so the constructs are then the ones who are saying, you, and you, but not you people who actually are representative of your communities, those people who are not only representative of communities, but could shut the whole system down. Those people are not being picked. It's only the people they know, they can see, because these are how these people operate themselves, the people who choose who they're going to elevate. Anyway. I'm going to move on from Sydney Morning Herald because Australian news is just currently all about, and I get it why this show is very hard going to watch. Yes, it's called The Daily Egg, so people are going to see it's just going to be all, light stuff. And previously it has been a mixture of things, and also the cover photos, the thumbnails for The Daily Egg show Dwayne and I that day. And usually we're, smiling, etc. Because that doesn't mean we hide. It's not clickbait. If it was clickbait, I'd have my boobs out, huh? But I'm going to read from Fiji Village. Let's go there. Let's see what's happening. So, featured historic match as the Ndrua women to host the Force at home in first Super Rugby semi-final. Oh my gosh. Join us for Rucks and Rolls next week as we tell you the news about what's happening in rugby all around the world. This is pretty cool. Women's rugby is taking off everywhere, particularly in Fiji and India, the countries where they haven't really, prevailed. But Australia has always had women's rugby, of course, not as touted as much as men's rugby. And maybe we need to talk about a very controversial topic about this, and we'll wait till Rucks and Rolls and we'll talk about this because it's an interesting point. We'll take more. But again, we'll bring the news about what's happening in women's rugby in Fiji. But there is a first Super Rugby semi-final at home. They're playing in Fiji. This is going to be huge.
Massive.
The Force, that's Western Australia, Western Force, and that's fantastic. We are really, again, Rucks and Rolls will tell you more about that. So, teachers permitted to leave work earlier for Fiji and Ndrua matches. You need to understand, rugby is a religion in Fiji, and you know what? It's perhaps a better form of unity than anything else that is considered religion in any part of the world. There are better ways to unite people, to say that we are all part of something. Anyway, I'm going to continue with other headlines on Fiji Village. No decision made to remove the International Women's Association from CWM, which is the Colonial War Memorial Hospital. No decision made to remove the International Women's Association from CWM. I have got to explore this article further. Health Minister Dr. Antonio Lalambalavu says there has been no decision made to remove the International Women's Association, and they welcome any assistance from people and organizations after information surfaced that there was a direct attempt by the Ministry of Health to disengage from IWA. I still don't know what's happening here. IWA President has continued to maintain that they are a registered organization. Look at the name of the president.
What?
Okay. I have questioned this particular organization before. I have questioned this particular, but then again, listen, direct attempts, or you have to perhaps do it. This is Fiji news, so it's all quite societal. The IWA president tweeted that in 2018, the then government ousted IWA from the CWM hospital for revealing shocking conditions at the maternity hospital. Well, that part of it is true. That part of it is very true. Look, I'm just going to move on from Fiji news now because it's all just too perplexing. Radio New Zealand reports of historical child sexual abuse with insect operating in New Zealand. Is that news for anyone? Is that news for anyone that there is sexual abuse rife within every organization, and the more pious the organization, the more abuse it is hiding? Hello, churches. I'm just going to now read bits and pieces of news I have accumulated on my Instagram. So let's see what's happening here. Gosh, seriously, what is going on in this world? Now, the other part, Senegal. Could you please just quickly look up Senegal for me, Senegal. Senegal's youngest president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, is set to cut ties with its former colonizer, France. By the way, do people understand that France colonized a lot of the African continent, which is why the Roman Catholics, who were French, Roman Catholicism is a French. We do need to unpack join us for Sitara, because Sitara is about everything celestial. When we talk about astrology, we talk about astronomy, and we talk about theology. Now, this is an interesting. I will have to look up news. There may be civil war in Senegal. There may actually be all sorts of things happening because people don't like being ripped away from their colonial oppressor. It becomes that Stockholm syndrome. So what's happening? What's happening in Senegal? Tell me a little bit about Senegal.
I'll tell you a little bit about Senegal.
Mm-hmm. What a little bit about the country.
What do you want to know? Because are you talking about the colonial era?
No, I'm talking about what,
A bit more specific, there's a lot. There's Senegal, officially the Republic of Senegal, westernmost country in the continent.
What has it got minerals-wise? What has it got, what is it rich in? Because that is what it comes down to. When people do not want to let go of a country they have colonized, and when people want to cut, it's because of the profits that have been made from the country. Like we are talking about Senegal, but I could be talking about Congo. It's okay. We'll actually touch on some of these things. Yes, there's a whole lot. I am now cold reading news pieces from, and I do need to share something heinous, absolutely heinous. Israeli drones, and I'm reading news article now from Al Jazeera. Israeli drones played the sounds of women and children screaming to lure Palestinians outside and kill them. If you have been watching news, then you are seeing that there have been some terrible things happening. Palestinians were fleeing, and walking along footpaths, and all of a sudden drones, or however they were being shot down. While they were fleeing. And for those of you who are on the side of Israel, because you think that this is a fair and equal war, and if you think that the people of Jewish faith are also all behind this genocide, and it is genocide. Any killing of people, mass, is a genocide. Why is that not understood? Why are we not angry at the people who did this to the people who are now Israeli? They are ex-Europeans. Why aren't you angry at Germans? The Germans are on the side of Israel. Why? Because of guilt. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in Studio K. Why can't people acknowledge that this is a terrible, terrible thing, even if you were against the Middle Easterns and you were pro-Jewish people? Understand that people of Jewish faith do not want this to be happening. Not what happened, the genocide that they had to endure and have intergenerational memory and PTSD from. Why isn't anyone angry at Germany for forcing this to happen? Why isn't anyone angry with the state of America for putting those people there, for chasing them away from the land of America? And now these people who were traumatized themselves, they're taking it out on people who cannot retaliate, so they have a body that may or may not. I am not pro-Hamas either. I'm pro-humanity. And if that makes me pro-Palestinian, so be it. I am pro-humanity. I don't want anyone to die until they're ready. Until only Earth has the right to determine our lifetime. More and more people are realizing something. When Earth decides to take revenge, we will know it. We'll be moving to Studio K. Dwayne is already heading there, and I'm going to head there soon. Ah, gosh. A 10-year-old Indigenous boy has taken his own life whilst in state care. Senator Lydia Thorpe urges nationwide reform in wake of 10-year-old suicide in state care. For a 10-year-old to have that ideation, to know that by ending their own life, they can end their life of pain. For a 10-year-old to feel that much pain in a country like Australia, built on sacred ancient land, this modern construct, that is problematic, very problematic, but has a lot of other incredible good points. And this is what happens in this country, on this land. Because something is rotten in the state of the world. And I think I'm quoting Hamlet, a Shakespearean play. A 10-year-old Indigenous boy has taken his own life whilst in state care. How is anyone okay with it? And the horror of this is that there are people who read that and go, because I have been reading comments on the social media platforms and how people are blatant with how they actually feel. I haven't bothered to read out a lot of news headlines here because another thing I'd saved to read. Woman wheels corpse into bank seeking loan signature, and it's a full video clip posted on Instagram. I will actually put the link to that and put links to whatever it is that I have read out or mentioned, cited. And this happened in Brazil, I think. Oh, gosh, yes, in Brazil. And there's an interesting comment here. And so a woman wheeled the corpse of an elderly man into a bank in Brazil, hoping to get a sign-off on a loan. And somebody wrote, "Poverty can drive people to do crazy things," and this is true. This is very true. And this is what they rely on, not the people who are stricken by poverty, people who enforce poverty on others. And that is what has happened, because in this world, with this bounty, with the riches, and we talk about the riches of the world in everything. Join us tonight for the slideshow. It was supposed to launch yesterday, but we realized we had far too many shows yesterday. And frankly, this is a lot of work. The script is in my head. I have to actually just sit down and take a breather after everything. I have to, I share everything we share. So, and after yesterday's Sandhya show, I wasn't able to do the slideshow. So the slideshow will be from now on Fridays, approximately 7 p.m. And that is our travel show. And we talk about an instance where we talk about Outback. Our first show is going Outback and that drops tonight, and it's got lots and lots of photos, and that's really all it is, photos and us talking about what we did out back. And we talk about a particular place we stopped at first, which is my favorite stop when I'm out back, before we carry on further inland. And that is a town that was found and named also because of its riches. I'm going to just, I have to read something good, right? So listen to this. Whales have been given legal personhood by Maori and Pacific leaders after a treaty was signed last month. But what does it actually mean? This is from ABC Pacific. The treaty was signed in a ceremony attended by the Maori king, the president of House of Ariki, along with elders from Tonga, Tahiti, Hawaii, and Rapa Nui, which people have called Easter Island. I have not actually said the proper names of the treaty or the Maori king, because I am very conscious of pronunciation and pedantic about it, and I'm cold reading here. But so it's He Whakaputanga Moana is the name of the treaty. And I'm going to read further. Under the treaty, whales will be recognized as a legal entity with rights and legal standing if harmed, said Maori conservationist Mere Takoko, who leads the Hinemoana Halo Ocean Initiative. That will mean companies that are undertaking unsustainable practices will now have to change those practices, she said, because whales are still being killed and massacred, and sadly by people who are supposed to respect life form, but maybe ancestors did it in a way that we must respect the bounty of the earth, and the whales are part of that. Now whales, we know, are magical creatures. So as Ms. Mere Takoko says, across the Pacific, indigenous peoples have always lived in harmony with the Moana ocean. Whales aren't just resources to be exploited, but sentient beings and our ancestors. And yes, I agree, there is something absolutely magical. So what does this mean? The treaty allows Ms. Takoko's team to start talks with governments across the Pacific to help craft a legal framework to protect whales. You know, in some ways, New Zealand is really quite ahead of things, in some ways, not. She said she hopes all the traditional leaders of the Pacific will join the cause. I guess that could be true of the entire world, right? The dichotomy. Will join the cause, and she plans to engage with governments. 2 global firms have also joined. I think one of the things that's going to matter most is not just the protection of the whale, but the convergence of indigenous knowledge, ocean guardianship with modern science, and bringing a whole community together to anchor our future. And with that, I'm going to move now to Studio K. Please join me, and I'm sorry that we don't have a better way of making the segue other than you having to look at black screen for the moment while I move. I'm sure that as we go along, we'll find more sophisticated means of doing this transition. But right now, walk with me as we move to Studio K and unpack some of the other things we were talking about earlier. Hello, darling. Now, I was just reading a wonderful thing about, oops, sorry, there you go. There's your clickbait. Whoopsies, sorry about that. This is a serious, but you know what? I'm a woman, I have breasts, and I'm serious with all of me. So get over it. This is not clickbait. This is just behind the scenes. Think of it that way. The transitions. Now, we were talking about a few things earlier because of that question I read out about faith and churches, and in Samoa, how the churches are where the riches of Samoa are. And this is, I don't know the background of why Samoa is so deeply religious and so many denominations. And by the way, you do understand that Anglican, the Church of England, I went to an Anglican girls' boarding school, and it's interesting to know that, well, Anglican, of course, is Germanic in origin. You need to know that, the Church of England.
Oh, yeah, all the pastors' houses and mansions.
Of course they are. Because this is how, this is where I want to talk about the Vatican. I was in turn, just awestruck by the magnificence of what I was looking at, and with it just bile and vomit coming up into my throat looking at this extraordinary glut and you know, the wealth, and you go into St. Basilica's cathedral. I'm respectful of everything I go into. And I saw Pieta, that, you know, and it's all just beautiful, but horrific at the same time. This is what was made to put fear in the you know, in people. And this is how it was shown that only people of piety and therefore these are the rich people because they're so pious. This is what, you know, they do. We will need to unpack in Sitara, which is where we talk about everything celestial, and it's not just astrology and astronomy. It's not just all fun. And when we talk about theology, we will talk about the beauty of why religion was created, and so many of the beautiful things about religion, but also what religion has been used for now, used as a tool to manipulate and control. Religion could have been a beautiful thing. Faith certainly is. Faith is what gives us all the hope we need to progress, because our bodies don't stop growing, but our minds get stunted. So we need to hold on to something, and that is hope. And for so many people, religion takes the place of hope. Faith and religion are two separate things, and I understand that now, because I have questioned people who I have asked, why are you religious? And they said, oh, I don't really consider myself religious. And I'm like, but you do actually, I suppose in the same way I now look to Hinduism to actually be representative of some of the things I think about and feel, not just think about, but absolutely connect with the frequencies of this planet and the ether and who we are, the electromagnetic radiation, which is a scientific thing, the Schumann resonance, the atoms that exist between all of us. There is no such thing as empty space. There is nothing empty between any of us.
Yeah, I always say the glass is always full.
The glass is always full, even if it has got no liquid in it. Faith, huh? What is faith? What is belief? It all comes down to trust. It all comes down to trusting self. If you trust self. But so many of us have been forced to not trust ourselves, because regardless of what we feel and what we know, because belief is something very separate from know. And before you get to belief, I think you first have to know, especially thyself. You've got to know thyself first before you have any, before belief comes into it. And by that, I mean, if you know yourself, you just know yourself, and you can unpack every step of what it is you do or are. Confidence, right? They call it confidence, and that's just knowing yourself. People who have confidence know they have whatever it is, the skills or the humanity to be that. But of course, there's a lot of false confidence. There's a lot of people who have the mask of confidence. And then, of course, there's people who have audacity. And that, of course, audacity or confidence, that depends on your racial grouping and your gender. And so if you're a Euro-white male, then you have confidence. If you're a brown woman, then you have audacity. So be it. But belief. But people don't want you to know yourself. Because profits are made when people doubt themselves, when people don't know themselves, keep people insecure and doubting, and therefore you will continue to make profit. Keep people wanting to, look like that they have got it all together, so therefore they will always be purchasing the newest, the best, the biggest, or keeping up with the Joneses. And that's about profit. Why are things so expensive? Profit. I do talk about, in order for us to actually get out of this quicksand that we are in, and by we, I mean the world. We are creating the hell on earth that earth was prior to the Great Deluge. And by that, I mean when water got dumped onto our planet. I'll talk more about that on Sitara next week, Mondays at 5 p.m. What is going on? I know we all know that this can't happen, but why do we accept it as fact and friction of this world? Why do we accept fiction as fiction? Why do we look at entertainment and go, oh, that's just entertainment, when we look at miracles or utopian ideals or utopian ways? Why do we consider that fiction and accept what is happening in reality as fact? Why do we not understand that the only thing that can change the world is ourselves, us? If we change person by person, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. Because, you know, it behooves everybody. It serves everyone's purpose to not change. I think that people have become used to just being resilient. But there are amongst us people who choose not to be, and that they get called freedom fighters. As if freedom is something we need to fight for, as if it wasn't our birthright. But we get born for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, I also read out a news headline about babies and how there's a baby drought in Australia, 1.6 as opposed to 2.3, which is the global average. I'm looking at a 1.6 baby. I'm like, okay. But I know these are averages, okay? That's how it works. But babies, yeah, I chose to deliberately not have a child. There's too many, as far as I'm concerned, there's far too many people in the world. And if there is going to be a reset happening soon, go for it. Let's do it. I think by now you should consider, I'm not saying there's an end of days. I don't think so. I have way more faith. I actually have a lot of faith in people. I cannot look at us and go, no. I know too many of us, well, that's two for you there right now, and people who, well, you, dear viewer, if you're here and if you've made it this far, then obviously you are that person of that caliber that does see the world as a place to actually want to save. It is worth it. This world is beautiful. Everything we have right now is shrouded and covered in the residue, the dregs of what? What do people want? I don't know what people want. They're based on insecurities and their lack of identity, the horrors that these people have put upon the rest of the world, based on their own inadequacies. It is not everyone's fault. You can't find yourself. Anyway. Yeah, it's steaming up because I'm getting a bit hot under the non-existent collar right now. Babies. You know, I do actually think we need to put a stop to it. I know. But look, if you really want to be a parent, and it's about parenting and about looking after a child and bringing up a child to its full potential, and that is an adult, then there are lots of children in the world to adopt. And to that, people will say, it's so hard to adopt. Yeah, I get it. Excuse me, I do need to clear my throat. I just need to turn off audio.
It's hard because you have to go through a screening process, right?
Oh, adoption is becoming harder and harder and harder.
It should be like that if you want to have a child, right?
Right. What a point. It should be like that, the screening process. And I have said this before, we've talked about this before. Children, people who want to drive, not just licenses, but actual, if you want to get behind what is potentially a weapon. So to have children, to drive a car, to be in the police force, if we're going to continue having such a thing for the protection of people, which we really shouldn't have in the first place, but oh well, needing to protect each other, but it didn't work so far, right? It just seems to have escalated. And if you want to drink alcohol and if you want to partake of that which we call drugs, then there should be rigorous psychological tests. And as Dwayne has just said, for adopting, there's huge screening
because if there's some people who aren't fit to adopt, that means there's some people unfit to be parents, right?
Oh, yes.
That's what they're saying.
And that's what people have absolutely overlooked, including myself. I have overlooked that as well. But absolutely, but people who want to be parents, adopting well, isn't always a thing. And you do see it in people who are adopted themselves. The first thing they do when they can is to have children of their own. And that is because of a lack of identity. Because regardless.
And the argument is everyone has the right to have children. Then why is it so hard to adopt a child?
If that is a right, that everyone has a right to have children, then why the opposite with women, that a woman cannot have the right to not want a child? I don't get that. But I do think that by now we should know that bringing more people into the world isn't going to solve the issue of what is going on right now. But not having more people to work the capitalist structures means there's going to be a lack of profit. The world needs to go into a no-profit era in order to really, we all need to walk forward together. But please understand, equity means hierarchy. Equality means we all hold hands and walk together. We're not going to get anywhere. People, if we think about it, if we're all facing outwards and holding hands, and we all, like say if you're in a circle, you know, and you're all holding hands, and you're all meant to then walk forward together, no one's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, we're all just going to be pulling each other back and unable to move forward. And those that are stronger are going to surge forward, and those who are not. So that's equality. That's not equity. Equity does mean hierarchy, that there are people who are born with a special set of skills to know and understand how to guide others. Not lead, guide. That is what leadership is. Positions of authority are merely there for guidance, because not everyone was born with the internal GPS to guide themselves through life. This is where religion comes into it, and it could have been a beautiful thing. But people use religion now as a crutch. People now use belief systems as a crutch, as to not think for themselves. So prayer, I do enjoy prayer now. I absolutely understand. And I have now adopted some mantras myself and I understand it. And I am now publicly saying, yes, I do understand it. I do. I have previously rallied against, why are people filling their minds with prayers and psalms and mantras, etc., and chants? They don't want to listen to their own voice, but it is because I have scraped the marrows of myself to my core. Each cell has been scraped of any delusion. I have faced myself, I have confronted myself, and I have really taken myself to task. And from that is where I started. I start continuously. And I am now filling myself, and I talked about this in depth yesterday on the Sandhya show, where I talked about mental health. I call that fundamental health. And how I said earlier in today's Daily Egg that mental health issues are different to a weak mind, because even the strongest amongst us have been traumatized through no fault of our own, traumatized by individuals and traumatized by the collective. Good people, strong people get mental health issues. And that is very different to a weak mind that gets traumatized and wants to externalize that trauma and take it out on everyone else, or they can't control it because their minds, there's something wrong. And if we're going to vaccinate people to protect us from viruses, etc., well, we do need to do something about that. But why do we insist on them taking medication? Profit. Medication works. I'm pro-medicine. I'm pro-science. I'm not a conspiracy theory about that, because I do believe that generally the world wants the world to keep ticking, but there are other things in place. And when I say generally, well, it's only 1% of the world that actually has the world's wealth. That's crazy. That's really a really insane statistic. But yeah, the babies thing, wow. You know, there's lots and lots of babies and children orphaned. There's lots and lots of babies and children who need the care of parents, because and even children who have parents. And I look at the parents and think, wow, you just had children, what, as badges of of responsibility and maturity that you can hide behind. And of course, as I read out in 2003, the then Treasurer Peter Costello introduced the baby boom tax. So if you have a baby, you're going to get paid a whole lot of money. And is that womb pimping? What is that? But then, and from then on, we saw how people who should not have been procreating and bringing forth human beings into the world continue to do so. But anyway, that's it for today. Today's The Daily Egg. Ta-da! Thank you very much for being here with us for The Daily Egg on Friday, April the 19th. We've got a few shows coming up this weekend, starting with this evening's The Slide Show, which is an old-fashioned travel show. It's all slides. Do join us for that. And then tomorrow we have got dropping What Was It Like Season 1. And on Sunday, join me for The Stylander at 2 p.m. and us for The Riff at 5 p.m. Thank you very much for being here. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. We'd love you to. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Come on, come and support us. Why won't you? Why wouldn't you? It just takes a simple click. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's very valuable to us. What costs you nothing is of huge value to us. Thank you very much for your support if you're watching right now. Truly appreciate it. Bye. See you later.